Remember when they used to laugh? Now they don't make a sound. They saw you when you were struggling. They watched you during your lowest moments, convinced your quietness meant you were finished. But they were blind to the real story unfolding. They witnessed what looked like a collapse, but it was actually a construction site for your soul. They labeled it a failure. A higher power saw it as essential training. They felt secondhand shame. A divine plan recognized it as a necessary step up. And now the noise has stopped, not because you demanded it, but because your transformation is too profound to ignore. You evolved, not from a place of ego or a desire for payback, but through a spiritual strengthening that defies human logic. Your peace is the final word. When people mock you, their target isn't really you. It's their own limited view of how a story should end. But the final chapter isn't theirs to write. The very individuals who scorned your efforts will one day witness the results of the faith they questioned. You see, when a promotion is destined from above, the ridicule is permitted because it becomes the soundtrack to your triumph. Their doubt fertilizes your resolve. Their dismissal sets the platform for a power far greater to be displayed. You faced moments of deep embarrassment, but those were your lessons in disguise. You've endured private sorrows, unseen by anyone, and in that solitude, your spirit was forged into something resilient. They watched you fall, but a divine eye saw you learning to stand with more power every single time. Every letdown was repurposed. Every blocked path was a redirection to a better destination. Your lowest point wasn't a sentence, it was a seminar. You were being polished, prepared, and molded into a vessel capable of holding the blessings that were being prepared for you. Now you stand where you once stumbled. You find joy where there was once only grief. You walk with a quiet assurance, not because you are flawless, but because you have witnessed what can be built from fragments. You no longer feel the need to justify your path or your choices to anyone. When you are lifted by a force beyond this world, human endorsement becomes irrelevant. The universe doesn't need a committee of critics to approve your blessings. It simply declares the season has arrived, and when that declaration is made, no force can prevent your ascent. The people who laughed were never your opposition. They were tools in a grander design. They were used to fortify your inner world, to smooth away pride, to hone your vision, and to ready your heart. Their mockery was intended to pull you off course, but it only anchored you more deeply to your source. Every harsh word became energy. Every rejection became a reason to push forward. Every defeat taught you something vital. What was meant to shatter you ended up shaping your very core. When you are aligned with a higher purpose, your progress becomes a mystery to others. You cease seeking their approval. You stop pleading for them to see your vision. You stop trying to belong in spaces you have spiritually outgrown. Because true elevation doesn't ask for applause, it demands faithfulness. And faithfulness often appears irrational to the outside world. They laughed because they had no access to the private work being done. They laughed because they didn't grasp that inner strength is cultivated in stillness. They laughed because they confused a temporary setback with a permanent state. But the plan was always known. The path was deliberate. You were being led through low places, not to be left there, but to be built up. The unnecessary was being cleared away to make room for the extraordinary. You thought you were losing your world, but you were only shedding what was never meant for your future. Distractions were being removed to amplify your destiny. You grieved for things that had to depart for you to expand. And now, from this new vantage point, you see it was all necessary. The dismissal had to occur. The waiting had to happen. The laughter was a required part of the process. Without it, you would never have uncovered the profound strength that comes from relying on something greater than yourself. Your silence is your superpower. There arrives a moment when you cease trying to disprove others and start striving to validate a divine promise. You stop answering every insult and start aligning with your mission. You stop questioning, why is this happening, and begin stating, I am grateful for the lesson. Because you finally perceive that every valley was a preparation for a peak. You understand that those who laughed were operating with a narrow lens. They observed your hardship, but they missed the seed of potential being sown. You were being planted, not penalized. And when a seed is placed in the earth, it appears to be the end, but in its breaking, new life emerges. You were placed in the soil of hardship, but you emerged with authority. You were placed in the soil of isolation, but you emerged with a confidence not of this world. Those who once whispered about you are now puzzled by your radiance. They can't comprehend how someone who was once fractured now emanates such calm. That is the result of restoration that defies human effort. You carry a different energy now, a serenity that can't be rationalized, a fortitude that can't be undermined, a happiness that isn't tied to external conditions. The desire for retaliation has left you. Your flourishing is your response. Your inner calm is your evidence. A higher power is your advocate. There was a season when you pleaded for the endurance just to make it through. Now you express gratitude for the capacity to prosper. There was a time you asked for obstacles to be removed. Now you are thankful they were used to refine you. You've realized that every challenge was not meant to break you, but to show you who you are at your core. The winds that sought to snap you only cleared away what was never truly part of you. And when the storm passed, you found a version of yourself that was more powerful than you ever imagined. That is the essence of spiritual growth. It's when you remain steady through life's temporary troubles, because your gaze is locked on eternal truths. They've stopped laughing because the light you now carry makes their shadows visible. They can't mock what they inwardly esteem. They can't deride what they secretly desire for themselves. The same voices that spoke against you are now hushed because they've observed a phenomenon they cannot logically explain. How a force for good took what was intended for damage and converted it into dignity. You didn't rise through scheming or spite. You rose through devotion, perseverance, and unwavering trust. That is why your ascent bewilders them. It is spiritual, not manufactured. When you walk a sacred path, your detractors become your spectators. A table is set for you in their full view, not to embarrass them, but to demonstrate the reality of divine commitment. You didn't need to engage in their battles. You only needed to remain steadfast. You didn't need to provide a commentary on your life. You only needed to believe in the right timing. And now, the very people who once questioned your vision are seeing it materialize. That is what occurs when you allow a divine author to hold the pen. Instead of letting others narrate your struggles, there was a period when you felt unseen, passed over, and abandoned. But what you didn't know was that you were being concealed for a purpose. Concealed so your foundations could grow deep before your results became evident. Concealed so you could develop before you were revealed. Concealed so no person could claim credit for what was being built by a power beyond them. And when the moment was perfect, you were brought into the light, not because you were ready for attention, but because you were ready for assignment. Now that you've ascended, your composure communicates more than your speeches. Your serenity speaks more than your past sorrows. Your humility resonates more than their chatter. You don't need to announce your identity anymore because your journey speaks for itself. You comprehend that true success isn't about getting even. It's about making the invisible visible. It's about demonstrating what can be accomplished with a life fully yielded. You see, when you grow in spirit, the world loses its ability to label you. You're no longer described by your origin story, your losses, or who abandoned you. You're defined by the potential placed within you. You've arrived at a plane where inner peace outweighs public opinion. Mission matters more than acceptance, and personal development matters more than hearsay. And those who used to ridicule can no longer touch you, not because you've become conceited, but because you've transcended the level where they are still operating. Every phase of your existence served a function. The suffering educated you. The mockery examined you. The rejection purified you. The delay developed you. The aloneness equipped you. You didn't endure all of that to stay the same. You endured it to be remade. And transformation will always bewilder those who only remember your previous form. But you don't owe them a breakdown. You owe the universe your thankfulness. Now observe the distance you've traveled. Observe the resilience you've gained. Look at the insight you now hold, the stillness in your soul, the light in your gaze. That isn't arrogance. It's the evidence of someone who has experienced a higher power directly. You leveled up, not by accident, but by decision. You decided to ascend instead of whine. You decided to connect instead of crumble. You decided to have faith instead of fear. You decided to release instead of retaliate. That is why your blessing is firm, because it was born from surrender. When you operate in this light, you stop pursuing things and start drawing them to you. You stop begging for opportunities because you become the kind of person who creates them by your very being. You become magnetic not through personality, but through the spiritual vitality that flows from a heart in harmony. And that is what unsettles people. They can't manipulate or contend with a favor that isn't human. You leveled up because you finally understood that not everyone who cheered for you was on your side. Some took more pleasure in your stumbles than in your successes. Some offered you a smile, but inwardly hoped you would never rise. And yet a divine intelligence used even their hidden agendas as part of a master plan. You didn't just advance in position, you advanced in understanding. You learned to perceive beyond surface appearances, to listen beyond spoken words, to sense the reality behind intentions. And that is when you discovered a profound truth. Your peace is too valuable to be entrusted to the opinions of people. You stop trying to justify your path to those who can't comprehend it. And you stop defending your reason for being to those who never discovered their own. That is when your life truly changed. That is when you began to be lifted beyond the reach of mere mortals. There was a chapter when you couldn't fathom the reason for the long delay. You sought answers, you waited, you wept, and still nothing seemed to shift. But now you see, you were not being ignored. You were being shielded. If the blessing had arrived too early, the noise of others might have sidetracked you. If you had been elevated before you were mature, ego might have undone you. So you were hidden in the quiet places, formed in seclusion, and made strong in silence. While they were mocking, a divine hand was sculpting. While they were gossiping, guidance was being given. While they were laughing, you were being raised in ways no one could see. You were being fortified for a future that demanded strength, not popularity. The reality is, every pause in your life was purposeful. You thought you were waiting on a sign, but the universe was waiting on you to mature, to recover, to learn, to let go of the craving for external validation. And once you did, doors opened that no person could close. A peace was brought where anguish once resided. And now, your very life is testimony that humility is exalted in its perfect hour. Those who mocked your patience now look upon your peace with envy. Those who made fun of your trust now gaze at your resilience with awe. And in their hearts, they recognize it was a power beyond you that accomplished it. When you are elevated, your perspective is also transformed. You cease viewing life through the lens of anxiety and start seeing it through the eyes of trust. You stop lamenting who departed and start appreciating who remained. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Use this experience." You begin to realize that the laughter of others was never truly about you. It was about their incapacity to grasp what was being orchestrated behind the curtain. People often ridicule what they cannot comprehend, and they misinterpret what remains invisible to them. They couldn't perceive your calling, your mission, or your latent power. But it was seen, and that was the only thing that counted. Now that you've ascended,
You carry yourself with a new gravity. You speak with conviction because you've survived conflicts that bestowed upon you a sacred confidence. You move with a quiet certainty because you've witnessed a way being made where there seemed to be no path. You no longer feel compelled to answer every provocation because your attention is too precious to squander on distractions. You've learned that composure is not a lack of strength. It is strength under perfect control. You've learned that your most powerful reply to critics is consistent action. You've learned that when you are supported from on high, your victory doesn't require a press release. It will announce itself. And this is the nature of true ascent. It doesn't come from rivalry. It comes from letting go. You didn't rise because you were the most vocal. You rose because you were the most devoted. You didn't prevail because you fought every opponent. You prevailed because you allowed a greater force to contend for you. You stopped pursuing people and started pursuing meaning. You stopped trying to be visible and started trying to be in sync. And synchronization with a higher purpose always produces a rise that human striving cannot replicate. Now the laughter has ceased, but not because you argued them into silence. It ceased because your change was more eloquent than their mockery. A divine plan ensured that your breakthrough would be visible enough to quiet the critics, yet serene enough to preserve your humility. Those who mocked your patience now look upon your peace with envy. Those who made fun of your trust now gaze at your resilience with awe. And in their hearts, they recognize it was a power beyond you that accomplished it.
Because leveling up is not about ego, it's about destiny. It's about stepping into the person you were always meant to become. It's about reaching the stage where you are no longer reliant on the approval of others, where you no longer fracture under criticism, where your trust becomes your unassailable fortress. Consider it. Every tear you shed nourished the seed of your future. Every betrayal propelled you toward a clearer understanding. Every time they declared you incapable, a whisper replied, "You are able." Every time they departed, a voice said, "Now you will learn the source of true sustenance." They assumed you needed them, but your only true need was for a connection beyond them. And when you finally grasped that, your entire reality shifted. Because reliance on people leads to letdowns, but reliance on a higher power leads to direction. And how that power honors those who continue to walk forward when ridiculed. It lifts those who stay compassionate when assailed. It elevates those who remain loyal when overlooked. You didn't know it then, but every difficulty was an examination of your core. Would you still trust when disgraced? Would you still hold to your values when misjudged? Would you still believe when nothing added up? You did, and that is why you leveled up. Not because you never faltered, but because you never gave up. Not because you never felt pain, but because you never surrendered. You held on when others released their grip. And in holding on, you demonstrated that your trust was authentic. You see, elevation is not granted based on fame. It is granted based on the heart's condition. It doesn't bless self-importance. It blesses steadfastness. It doesn't honor loudness. It honors action in line with principle. The world applauds what is visible, but the universe rewards what is done in secret. Your sacrifices that went unnoticed were seen. Your private struggles that received no praise were witnessed. Your discipline when no one was watching was noted. And the declaration was made, "Now it is time." That is why you are rising now, not because you manufactured it, but because you were faithful when it was most difficult to be. And now your essence carries an authority that cannot be counterfeited. You speak, and people sense a deeper resonance because your words are born from suffering, transformed into insight. You move differently because you have been purified by challenge. You love more openly because you know the sting of being unloved. You forgive more readily
because you have known the pain of being misunderstood. That is what true ascent looks like. It's not merely external achievement, it's internal revolution. It's when you cease reacting from a place of hurt and start responding from a place of wholeness. They're not laughing anymore because your maturity revealed their stagnation. They see now that your waiting period wasn't a refusal, it was a deliberate design, and you are no longer glancing backward to demonstrate anything to them. You have moved beyond that plane. You are focused on what lies ahead, on what you are being called toward next, because you understand a powerful truth. Your story is not solely for your benefit. It is for others who are still in the season of being laughed at. You are living evidence that mockery does not determine fate, and laughter does not restrict what a higher power can accomplish. You can now stand before others and affirm, do not be troubled if they laugh. Do not fear if they doubt your path. Simply continue walking in faith, because a day will come when they will have no option but to observe what is accomplished through you. That is the beauty of divine restoration. It doesn't necessitate vengeance, only truth revealed. A higher power doesn't need to raise its voice to defend you. It blesses you in a manner that is more articulate than any speech. It doesn't seek to shame those who opposed you. It elevates you in their presence so they understand it was never your own power at work. It was a force beyond you. There was a time when their laughter felt like a wound. Now it doesn't even register in your spirit. You have outgrown the pain. You have outgrown the need for others to validate your worth. You have outgrown the pattern of constantly having to prove yourself. That is how you know you have genuinely leveled up, when the things that once caused you hurt no longer hold any sway over you. You have transitioned from reaction to revelation. You have transitioned from striving for the spotlight to simply being in alignment with a divine will. And let me tell you, when you reach this state, you will attract tranquility. You will attract understanding. You will attract resilience. Because the instant you cease chasing people and begin pursuing a connection with the source, your entire energy transforms. You become undisturbed by distractions, unaffected by envy, immune to gossip. You exist on a different wavelength, one fueled by faith and maintained by a guiding hand. That is why your radiance seems inexplicable. It's not the glare of arrogance. It's the reflection of a favor that is not of this world.
The very people who laughed at you will one day request your guidance. The same ones who doubted you will ask for your support. The same ones who left you out will reference your insights. And you will not harbor bitterness because you comprehend this was never a battle between you and them. It was about a divine force demonstrating its capability through an individual who refused to quit. You will smile not from a place of superiority, but from a place of profound peace. You will assist them not from a desire for payback, but from a place of understanding. Because you've learned that authentic strength is not found in proving others wrong. It is found in proving a divine promise right. Your journey was never intended to be comfortable. It was intended to be transformative. You had to experience loss to gain wisdom. You had to weep to be cleansed. You had to be alone to hear clearly. You had to be laughed at to cultivate inner fortitude. And now that you've leveled up, you perceive that it was all purposeful. You no longer resent the pain. You appreciate its role. You no longer regret the waiting. You are grateful for it, because it constructed something within you that ease and comfort never could. You are not the same person they laughed at. You are wiser, more centered, stronger, and more firmly rooted in faith. You've learned that no negative force can ultimately succeed when you are under divine guardianship. You've learned that when people exit your life, it is often because you are being guided to a higher level. You've learned that sometimes the greatest gifts arrive disguised as profound disappointments. And that is why you no longer seek explanations from people. You find your answers in a larger plan.
You leveled up because you released the final outcome to a higher authority. And that is the ultimate level any person can attain, to walk in complete trust, to declare, even if they laugh once more, even if I stumble again, I know I will be lifted once more. That is unshakable trust. That is unstoppable strength. That is divine ascent. You see, when you truly walk this path, your rise becomes unavoidable. It doesn't matter who doubted you, who ignored you, or who walked away. When a decision is made from on high to lift you, not even a chorus of mockery can keep you grounded. The very forces that tried to hold you down will be compelled to watch as you are carried above. That is the power of a favor that transcends human understanding. You were not selected randomly. You were selected with intention. The laughter of others was simply the sound of a limited perspective. They didn't realize you were being constructed away from the public eye. There were seasons when you felt completely invisible, but you were seen. There were days you were profoundly misunderstood, but every silent tear, every quiet plea, every heavy sigh was understood. While the world overlooked you, a cosmic record was kept of your faithfulness. And now that faithfulness has become the bedrock of your life. That is why you stand firm when others waver. That is why you can smile in the midst of turmoil that would overwhelm others. You've learned that peace does not originate from the applause of the crowd. It originates from being in harmony with the divine will. And let this truth sink deep into your being. When you level up through this connection, your life begins to mirror a wisdom that is not your own. You cease trying to validate your existence through material possessions and begin validating it through the peace you carry. You realize that your true success is not measured by how high you climb, but by how deeply you trust. The world celebrates outward achievement, but the universe celebrates the inner metamorphosis. They laughed because they only saw the surface, but the real work was happening beneath. Deep in your core, deep in your heart, deep in your soul, seeds were being planted that no amount of ridicule could ever destroy.
Now your silence is powerful, not because you're resentful, but because your peace confounds them. They cannot fathom how you can move with such calm after all the turmoil, how you can extend forgiveness after such deep betrayals, how you can love after experiencing such hurt. But that is what happens when you find a healer for your soul. You don't just recover, you rise with newfound wisdom. You don't just move on, you move to a higher plane. You don't just survive, you shine with an inner light. Because when healing occurs at this level, it doesn't just repair the broken pieces. It forges something stronger, purer, and more luminous than before. They're not laughing anymore because they now recognize that you were never the object of the joke. Their mockery was a temporary sound, but your purpose is an enduring force. And purpose always outlasts the opinions of people. You learned to stop struggling for the spotlight because you realized that a divine mission doesn't require a large audience. It requires obedience. You stopped reacting to negativity because your spirit matured beyond the noise. You no longer worry about being underestimated because you understand that a higher power often chooses those the world overlooks. The same people who thought you were finished now see that you were merely in the preparation phase. A divine intelligence has a way of converting mockery into drive. It has a way of transfiguring humiliation into honor. What they once ridiculed, it will one day use as the very reason they regard you with respect. The very circumstance that brought you at tears will one day be a source of your gratitude. Because when a sacred force is involved, every painful detail finds its role. Every setback is secretly a sacred step. Every disappointment is a cosmic correction. You believed you lost something vital, but space was being cleared for something far greater. And now, as you stand in this season of victory, you see that it was all part of a magnificent design,
one that no human intellect could have conceived. Remember, those who laughed at you were part of your training regimen. They were permitted to mock you so you could learn how to operate without their endorsement. Rejection was allowed so you could build toughness. Failure was permitted so you could learn true faith. The storm was sent so you could learn the power of letting go. Every no you heard, every door that slammed shut, every betrayal that wounded you, it all taught you how to depend completely on a source beyond yourself. That is why you've leveled up, because you stopped depending on people and started depending on a power that never fails. Now your heart no longer trembles at the sound of laughter. You've learned that the voice of the divine is louder than the noise of critics. You've learned that the same crowd that mocks can one day stand in awe. You've learned that laughter is fleeting, but divine favor is everlasting. The very ones who once mocked you are now being used as witnesses to your transformation, so they can understand that outcomes are determined by a force beyond human control. Look at you now, standing stronger than ever before. Not perfect, but processed. Not proud, but profoundly peaceful. Not loud, but powerfully effective. That is the portrait of divine growth. It's not about displaying your success to the world. It's about walking humbly with the strength you possess, because you know that everything you have, everything you've become, and everything you are becoming is not your own doing. It is the result of grace, guidance, and a greatness that transcends you.
Do you know why your growth astonishes people? Because they remember who you were, but they cannot comprehend who you have become. They only witnessed your breaking, but they never witnessed your rebuilding. They only saw your pain, but they never saw your private conversations with the divine. They only saw your losses, but they never saw your late-night surrenders. They saw your struggle, but they didn't see your ultimate release. That is why they are quiet now. Because what was once a hidden transaction between you and a higher power has now become manifest in your life. And let this be an assurance to your soul. When you remain humble in difficulty, you will be raised in a manner that will quiet every critic without you uttering a single word. Your success will be its own announcement. Your peace will be the proof of your growth, and your radiance will be the testimony of a power beyond you. You won't need to explain how you arrived, because those who once mocked will see it with their own eyes, and they will know it was not luck, not a fortunate coincidence, but the hand of a divine plan. You've reached a place where you no longer seek retaliation, because you understand that justice is handled far more perfectly than you ever could. It knows precisely when to reveal, when to elevate, when to restore, and when to reward. So you stopped fighting for recognition and started fighting for what is right and true. You stopped demanding that the scales be balanced and started trusting in the perfection of divine timing. And that is when your peace returned in full measure. That is when your heart was fully mended. That is when your inner light began to burn brightly once again. There's something sacred about those who endure without fanfare. Something formidable about those who suffer in silence, yet rise with grace and poise. The world cannot comprehend it because its origin is not of this world. It is divine. You leveled up because you stopped allowing pain to label you and started allowing purpose to refine you. You realized that even your tears had a function, that your silence contained a potent force, that your waiting was filled with significance. You found strength not in controlling your circumstances, but in surrendering them. And that is what distinguishes those who merely get by from those who truly rise. It is trusting a higher plan even when you cannot see the blueprint. Now you walk with a different gait, not because you are better than anyone else, but because you have traversed landscapes that others could not endure. You carry a wisdom that cannot be taught in any institution. It can only be earned in places of isolation and seeking. You carry a peace that cannot be discovered in commotion, only in quiet communion.
You've witnessed how beauty is brought forth from ashes, order from chaos, and strength from profound sorrow. You've seen how every fall was actually a preparation for a greater rise. That is why your confidence is not arrogance, it is faith that has been tested and refined. And though you have risen, never forget the lessons learned in the low places, because humility is the safeguard that protects your elevation. Pride leads to a fall, but gratitude ensures that promotion endures. So give thanks for those who laughed, for they compelled you to grow. Give thanks for those who doubted, for they forced you to deepen your faith. Give thanks for those who left, for they created space for something better to enter. Every person and every experience served a purpose in sculpting the person you are today.
You've leveled up not just in your circumstances, but in your very essence. You no longer measure success by the volume of applause, but by the depth of your peace. You no longer crave validation, because you have discovered fulfillment in a divine yes. You no longer fear the future, because you have witnessed what can be done with a heart that is fully surrendered. You are living proof that no mockery, no delay, no betrayal can halt what has been divinely ordained. You are tangible evidence that divine timing is never late, divine purpose is never lost, and divine favor is never withheld. There was a time when they mocked you. They pointed, they whispered behind your back, and they laughed at your humble beginnings. They interpreted your silence as weakness, your patience as incompetence, your humility as defeat. But what they failed to grasp was that a divine work was happening in secret. While they were talking, you were learning. While they were laughing, you were being lifted. While they were doubting you, you were being developed. The hands that once shook with uncertainty have now become hands that wield strength and offer comfort. You didn't level up because of the applause of the crowd. You leveled up because of your unwavering faith. And now the same people who mocked you are compelled to watch as a power beyond this world moves through your life. You see, there comes a time when you are hidden, a season when people depart, when no one notices your hard work, when opportunities seem to vanish and your worth feels unrecognized. But that is not rejection, that is protection. Those who are chosen are often set apart, not to be broken, but to be built into something new. You are pulled back from the noise so you can discern a quieter, more profound voice. Comfort is removed so you can find your core convictions. And in the dark, silent corners of existence, where no one applauds, no one praises, and no one believes in you, that is precisely where destiny is shaped. You leveled up in that silence. You are becoming powerful in the unseen places. Every tear you cried was nurturing your future. Every heartbreak you endured was constructing your resilience. Every betrayal you faced was sharpening your ability to discern truth from falsehood. You see, you weren't losing. You were in a state of accelerated learning. Dependence on people was being systematically removed, so you could learn to depend on a source that never fails. Because when your strength is derived from this connection, you have no need for the validation of others. You have no need for their approval, and you certainly have no need for their applause. When you walk in this truth, your confidence is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is the profound peace that declares, even if I am entirely unseen, I am fully known. Even if no one believes in me, my source believes in my purpose. And that is why they are not laughing anymore, because now they are confronted with the evidence of a transformation they cannot explain. You are no longer the person you once were. You have spiritually and emotionally outgrown the judgments of those who once looked down on you. You have stepped into a version of yourself that was tempered in the fire and solidified by faith. Your silence became your most effective defense. Your patience became your most strategic tool. You allowed a higher wisdom to handle the complexities you could not unravel. And now the results of your journey are speaking for themselves. Let me affirm this to you. When a divine force levels you up, it is not a subtle event. It is undeniable. You don't need to proclaim it. Your peace is a louder statement than any gossip.
You don't need to prove anything. Your personal evolution reveals all that needs to be known. Elevation of this kind happens in ways that confound those who previously underestimated you. The same voices that said, "You'll never amount to anything," are now at a loss for words. The same eyes that rolled in disbelief are now wide with wonder. Because when a decision is made from a higher realm to honor an individual, no amount of jealousy, manipulation, or slander can prevent it. But understand this, leveling up is not merely about worldly success. It's not about wealth, fame, or material accumulation. It is about spiritual ascent. It is about becoming unshakable in your faith, immovable in your inner peace, and undisturbed by what no longer contributes to your soul's mission. You were not leveled up to impress other people. You were leveled up to fulfill a purpose that was placed within you. The people who mocked your faith didn't realize that your secret advantage was not your talent, but your trust. You believed when the evidence was not there. You remained kind when they were unkind. You continued to pray when the situation looked hopeless. That is why you leveled up, because a higher power honors those who persist even when it is painful. And now you walk with a new sense of purpose. You speak with intentionality. You move with discernment. You've learned that not everyone who offers you applause genuinely cares for you, and not everyone who walks beside you is walking toward the same sacred destination. That wisdom is your protection. That discernment is your shield. You no longer seek to get even. You seek to understand deeper truths. You no longer chase after people. You chase after inner peace. You no longer feel the need to explain your path, because your elevation is its own explanation. The laughter of others no longer has the power to hurt you, because you've learned that those who mock what they cannot understand eventually come to respect what they can no longer deny. You see, when blessings begin to flow, they also have a way of revealing the true nature of hearts. Your success can unveil envy in others. Your peace can expose their inner turmoil, and your growth can uncover the genuine motives of those around you. That is why some individuals disappeared from your life when you began to rise, not because you became a different person, but because the light you carried made their own darkness uncomfortable. Your radiance was too intense for their insecurities. Your faith was too authentic for their pretense. So do not grieve their departure. Instead, be thankful for their exit, because sometimes subtraction is a form of divine promotion. Not everyone who began the journey with you is meant to finish it with you. Some people were destined only for your season of struggle, not for your season of success. They were meant to witness your pain, but not your promise. When you are taken higher, the atmosphere changes, and not everyone can function in the new environment. That is why your circle became smaller. That is why you lost people you believed would always be there, because your next level required purity of heart, not a large following. It required sacred solitude, not social validation. And now you understand that being alone with the divine is infinitely more valuable than being surrounded by people whose care is conditional.
And so, as you stand in this new season, do not apologize for your progress. Do not minimize your blessings to make others feel more comfortable. Do not conceal your growth because others are still laughing at a version of you that no longer exists. The old you is gone. The hesitant you is gone. The fearful you is gone. The person who accepted disrespect, believed lies, and settled for less is no more. A higher power has raised up a new you, one that walks in self-respect, one that speaks with authenticity and authority, one that refuses to return to the things that once caused brokenness. You leveled up, and this time it is permanent. The plan for you was never for you to remain small.
You were allowed to be underestimated so that when the elevation came, no human being could claim the credit. The glory belongs solely to the source. Every step of your journey, the pain, the silence, the waiting, it all served a divine purpose. You didn't understand it then, but you do now. The mockery was the mirror that reflected back to you your true identity. It revealed that your strength does not come from being accepted by people, but from being chosen by a power far greater. And let me remind you, this new level is not the final destination. The work is not finished with you yet. There are still higher places to go, deeper truths to integrate, greater peace to embody. You are not where you were, but you are also not yet where you are ultimately headed. The laughter of others was a temporary noise, but the favor you walk in is an eternal reality. You are living proof that when a divine force is for you, no one can successfully be against you. You are evidence that silence holds power, that patience is a form of strength, and that faith is the ultimate victory. So continue walking forward, continue believing, continue allowing yourself to be refined, defined, and elevated. Because as long as you keep your trust in that which is greater, there will always be another level awaiting you. And every time you rise, remember this truth. Those who once laughed will have no choice but to watch in respectful silence as the glory of a divine plan unfolds in your life. And now, as you stand in this moment, calm, strong, and unshaken, know that what you passed through was never intended to destroy you. It was intended to define the extraordinary person you are. Every challenge, every betrayal, every lonely night was the hand of a divine sculptor shaping the warrior within. You are no longer the one they laughed at. You are the one they look to for inspiration, the one whose strength cannot be easily explained, only witnessed. You leveled up not by random chance, but by a series of conscious choices, the choice to trust when every part of you wanted to give up. Look at yourself now, not filled with bitterness, but made better. Not broken, but rebuilt with stronger materials. Not living in fear, but walking in faithfulness. That is what happens when you stop trying to prove your worth to people and start proving the power of your faith to the universe. You become unshakable. You stop chasing the approval of others and start walking firmly in your divine assignment. You begin to understand that what others call rejection, a higher intelligence calls redirection. What others intended for your harm was transformed into a tool for your growth. So walk forward with peace as your companion and gratitude as your song. Let them observe your calm demeanor and wonder how you found it. Let them see the light you carry and wonder how it continues to shine so brightly after all you have faced. That is what happens when your strength is not sourced from the world. It comes from a connection that is eternal. You leveled up because you allowed that connection to lead. You rose because you refused to let your pain write your story. You overcame because you finally believed that a divine plan was far greater than your temporary suffering. Never forget, your story is still being written. The laughter of others was merely the sound of your preparation. Now your life is the living testimony. A divine force has turned your silence into a profound success, your wounds into deep wisdom, your waiting into a decisive victory. You have leveled up not for the sake of pride, not for the approval of people, but for a purpose that transcends them all. And from this moment forward, may your life forever echo this undeniable truth. When you are aligned with a power greater than yourself, no mockery can ultimately hinder you. No adversary can ultimately block your path, and no past can ultimately keep you from rising. You are walking proof that faith, when genuine, never fails. If this message resonated with you, please like this video and follow Winds of Thought for more.